His hand tightened around hers. "You're not saying you're leaving?" "I must return to my world for a while," she replied, her small voice breaking slightly. "They need to see that the light is safe again. They need to feel the change. But that doesn't mean I will disappear forever." A long silence fell between them. "You promised." "I wouldn't be alone again," Ethan said quietly, tears already forming in his eyes. "I will keep that promise," she said, stepping closer to him. "But sometimes love also means letting someone go, even when it hurts." Behind them, the glowing light beings appeared again, but their energy felt different now. They were no longer controlling. They were respectful, almost grateful. One of them bowed slightly toward Ethan, human of Earth. "Because of you, the Keeper found her true power. You have become a guardian, even though you were never born as one." "I never wanted power," Ethan replied in a broken voice. "I only wanted her to be safe. And because of that, she is," the being answered. Luma slowly stepped away from him, walking toward the light that began to build a path upward to the gate. Each step she took made his heart ache more and more. He forced himself to stay strong for her. "You're so brave," he said softly. "So much braver than I am." She turned back to look at him one final time. Her whole body glowed brighter than any star. "No," she replied gently, smiling through her own tears. "I am only brave because you taught me what love is." With those words, she lifted slowly from the earth, rising into the light. The forest, the wind, Tess, and even the sky seemed to pause to honor the moment. Ethan fell to his knees as her small, glowing form moved higher and higher. "Luma," he whispered, his voice full of pain and pride. She stretched out her tiny hand toward him one last time, and a thin ray of warm light connected them, like a thread that could never be broken. Then, slowly, she passed through the gate. A deep, peaceful silence filled the world. The gate folded inward, gently, and became a single shining star in the sky, brighter than any other. It pulsed once, twice, then settled. The forest cleared, returned to normal, leaving behind only soft grass, gentle air, and a man kneeling in the center of it all, alone, but not empty. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. People noticed something strange about Ethan. He was no longer the quiet, broken man who walked with his head down. His eyes were full of light. His heart was full of purpose. He helped children, helped animals. He planted trees where the forest had once burned. Wherever he walked, life seemed to follow. And at night, when he lay beneath the open sky, the brightest star always flickered gently above him. He would smile. "I know you're still there," he would whisper, and somehow, he felt her answer. One peaceful night, as he stood outside his home, the air around him shimmered softly. Tiny particles of light floated down like snow. And standing before him, no longer tiny, but still glowing with the same beautiful essence, was a familiar figure. "Ethan," a gentle voice whispered. His heart nearly stopped. "Luma?" He breathed. She smiled, now taller, radiant, more powerful than ever, but still the same soul he had loved. "I told you," she said, "you would never be alone again. The worlds are now in harmony, and that means I can live in both." Tears streamed down his face as he rushed forward and held her. "You came back," he whispered. "I never truly left," she replied softly. High above them, the shining star pulsed one last time, now at peace, knowing its keeper had finally found her home. Ethan stood there, unable to move, unable to speak. The girl standing in front of him was taller now, older in form, glowing with a calm and beautiful light, but those eyes were the same ones that had once looked up at him from the cold forest floor. Luma?" He whispered again, tears streaming down his face. "Yes," she replied softly, her voice full of warmth. "It's me." He reached out slowly, afraid she might vanish like a dream. But when his hands touched her arms, she felt real, warm, alive. "You came back," he said, his voice shaking. "I promised I would," she answered. "And this time, I'm not just visiting. I am here to stay." The night air shimmered around them. Soft glowing particles floated like tiny stars, circling the two of them. The world itself seemed to pause, giving them this moment of peace. "You don't know how long I waited," Etha said, holding her tightly now, no longer afraid. "Every night I looked at the sky. Every night I hoped that light I saw was really you." "It was," she whispered. "Every time you chose kindness instead of anger. Every time you helped someone. Every time you believed in goodness. I felt it, from across worlds." They walked slowly to the edge of the small forest clearing, where everything had first changed. The trees no longer looked dark and frightening. They looked proud, grateful, alive with new green leaves that glowed softly in the moonlight. "This world is healing because of you," Ethan said as he looked around. "No," Luma replied, turning to him with a gentle smile. "It is healing because of the choices you made. I only opened a door. You walked through it with love." She raised her eyes to the sky. The bright star that had watched over them for so long began to move, breaking into a ribbon of soft light that slowly drifted down. It settled into her hands. "I don't have to guard the gate alone anymore," she said. "The worlds are connected now. Not through force, but through understanding. Through the bond you and I created." A tear rolled down her cheek, glowing like liquid starlight. "And now, I finally get to live instead of hiding." Ethan smiled through his own tears. "Then live here," he said. "Live this human life with me. Feel the sun, the rain, the music, the laughter. Be more than just a keeper. Be you." She looked at him, deeply moved. Slowly, her glow softened. Her skin became more human, though still touched with a gentle shimmer. Her eyes remained star-filled, but now they also held something new. Belonging? "I've chosen Earth," she said quietly. "Not because I have to, but because this is the place where I first felt safe. Where I was first loved." He gently held her face in his hands. "Then this is your home, forever, if you want it to be." "I do," she answered. In that moment, the sky above lit up in a way it never had before. Soft streams of color painted the darkness, blues, purples, golds, and silvers like the universe itself was celebrating their reunion. People in the town woke up in the middle of the night to see the sky glowing with beauty. Some thought it was a dream. Some thought it was magic. But everyone felt the same strange warmth in their hearts. A new peace had entered the world. Days passed, then weeks, then months. Luma learned what it meant to be human. She laughed for real, not just softly, but loudly. She learned to feel rain on her skin, to dance in the grass, to listen to music, to smile without sadness behind it. Ethan watched her grow stronger, happier, more alive every day. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky orange and pink, she stood beside him and asked softly, "Do you ever regret it?" He looked at her, confused. "Regret what?" "Finding me." "That night in the forest," he smiled, a peaceful, loving smile. "That was the best moment of my entire life," he replied. "You didn't fall into my world by accident, Luma. You saved me, just as much as I saved you." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "And now," she whispered, "we belong to each other's worlds." Above them, the sky held only one star that was brighter than the rest. But now, it no longer felt lonely. It felt complete, because the tiny alien child who once cried alone in the dark had finally found her forever home. The end. Ethan, she whispered, her voice weak but clear. You're awake, he breathed, relief washing over him. You scared me. She gave a tiny, tired smile. You stayed, she said softly. Of course I stayed, he answered. I will always stay, Luma. She slowly sat up, the blanket slipping off her shoulders. The broken star mark on her back began to glow again, but this time it did not flicker. It shone with a calm, steady light. It is changing, she murmured, looking over her shoulder. The mark, he asked. It is becoming whole again. Because of you. He looked at the glowing symbol and noticed something new. The broken shape was slowly connecting, forming a complete circle with gentle rays. Like the beginning of a small sun. What happens when it becomes whole? He asked quietly. Luma looked at him with eyes full of both hope and sadness. Then I will remember who I am completely, and they will find me faster than ever. A heavy silence fell. You mean? They will come with more power, he said. She nodded once. He felt fear grip his heart, but he didn't let it show on his face. Instead, he forced a small, brave smile. Then we simply have to be ready, he said. She looked at him, surprised by his calm. You are not afraid? She asked. I am, he admitted honestly. But fear is not stronger than love. And I love you like you are my own child. The words stunned her. Tiny sparks of light danced around her fingers. Love. She repeated softly, as if the word itself held a deep meaning. Yes, he said. And love is more powerful than anything chasing you. She leaned into him and wrapped her small arms around his neck. For a moment, he could feel her glowing heart against his chest. Then, suddenly, the air inside the cabin changed. The temperature dropped. The small flame in the lantern went out. Outside, the trees began to bend, as if pushed by an invisible force. Ethan's eyes widened. They found us again. This time, it did not start with shadows. This time, a tall figure of pure silver light appeared just outside the doorway. It was not like the hunters. It was not dark. It was ancient, powerful, not evil. But not kind either. Luma, the figure's voice echoed, not through the air, but directly into their minds. Daughter of light, keeper of the gate. She froze. You remember, the figure continued. The world you came from is breaking. You were chosen to save it, but you ran, and hid here, among humans. She didn't run, Ethan shouted. She was taken. She was abandoned. She is not meant to be held by human hands, the being replied. She was created for something greater. Luma trembled, torn between fear and memory. She is still a child, Ethan said, stepping between her and the figure. She deserves peace. She deserves to grow without being used again. The being looked at him for a long, silent moment. Then, for the first time, it hesitated. She has chosen you, it said, noticing the light around her reacting to his presence. That bond was never meant to happen. And yet it did, Ethan said firmly. So maybe that means something too. Behind him, Luma stepped closer and placed her hand on his back. A warm surge of light passed into him, giving him strength he had never known. She spoke then, louder, stronger, filled with determination. I will return to my duty, she said, but not as a prisoner, not as a weapon. I will return only when I choose, and only if he is with me. The being looked into her eyes and finally bowed its glowing head slightly. Then grow, keeper, it said. Awaken fully. When the mark becomes complete, the path will open again. With those words, the figure dissolved into soft, drifting particles of light. Silence returned to the forest. Luma collapsed against Ethan. Exhausted by the pressure of it all, he held her tightly, whispering, "You are not alone in this. Not today. Not ever." Outside in the quiet sky, a new star flickered into existence, brighter than any other, and for the first time. It pulsed with the same gentle rhythm as Luma's heart. The universe had marked her again, but this time, she was not afraid. Not while she had him. The forest did not feel the same anymore, ever since the ancient light being had appeared and vanished. The air felt thicker, heavier, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Even the birds avoided the area around the small hidden cabin. Silence wrapped around the wooden walls like an invisible shield. Inside, Luma slept peacefully on the old bed. Her body no longer trembled from fear. Instead, it glowed softly, like a candle that refused to go out. The mark on her back was no longer broken. The light inside it was slowly connecting, like lines being drawn by something unseen. Ethan sat beside her, watching each gentle breath she took. His heart was full of love, but also fear, because he knew her peaceful sleep meant her transformation had already begun. Hours passed. Suddenly, a warm golden light filled the entire cabin. It did not come from the sun or the fire. It came from her. Luma floated slightly above the bed, her eyes still closed, her small arms spread open. Symbols made of light appeared around her, floating in the air, moving slowly in graceful circles. "We're not alone," Ethan whispered. A whisper answered from the forest. Not a threat, not a command, a warning. The transition has begun. The trees outside glowed faintly. The ground pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Far above, the same glowing circle in the sky began to open again, larger and clearer than before. Ethan stepped closer to her. "Luma, wake up, please. Wake up." Her eyes slowly opened, shining brighter than ever. "I remember more now," she whispered. "What?" he asked softly. "What do you remember?" "My world," she said, her voice echoing with more than just her own. "It is not dying. It is trapped, caught between light and darkness. They want me to close the gate forever. And you?" he asked. "I don't want to destroy one world to save another," she said, her words filled with gentle strength. "There is another way, but no one has ever dared to try it." "What is that way?" he whispered. She looked down at him, her small glowing face filled with a quiet certainty. "It needs two souls instead of one." The words struck him like thunder. "A keeper and a guardian," she continued. "A heart of light and a heart of love." Ethan's breath caught. "You're saying me?" he asked softly. "You chose me when your world told you to run," she said. "You held me when even my own world abandoned me. That is why the gate listens to you now." The air around him began to glow too, for the first time in his life. Ethan felt something awakening inside his own soul, a deep, ancient warmth that had never existed before. Outside the cabin, the forest bent gently outward, making space. The clearing in front of them lit up like a circle made for a ritual. "It's time," Luma whispered. Fear filled him. "I don't even know what will happen," he said, his voice trembling slightly. She floated down and gently stepped onto the ground, standing face to face with him now. Even though she was small, she no longer seemed like a helpless child. She seemed timeless. "That's what makes it real," she replied. "If I have to face the unknown, I want to face it with the one who loves me." He closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded. "Then we walk together," he said. They stepped outside. The glowing path formed beneath their feet, leading them to the center of the clearing. Above them, the gate opened wider, revealing a beautiful glowing world on the other side instead of darkness this time. Light beings gathered around the edges of the clearing, watching in silence, surprised, curious, hopeful. Luma lifted her hand toward the sky. Ethan placed his hand over hers together the moment their palms touched. A powerful wave of pure light exploded outward, not in destruction, but in harmony. It moved into the forest, into the sky, into the invisible lines that connected worlds. The gate trembled, then stabilized. The beings gasped. She is no longer just a keeper. One whispered, "She has formed the bond." Ethan could feel everything now, her loneliness, her fear, her hope, and she could feel his. They were no longer two separate souls. They were connected light and love, human and alien world. And world, a new kind of balance as the light settled. The gate slowly transformed into a peaceful glowing arch instead of a tearing wound in the sky. It's working. Ethan breathed. Luma smiled brightly, more beautiful now than any star above them. "There is a bridge now," she said. "A path instead of a prison." Tears filled his eyes. "You did it," he whispered. "You saved both worlds." "No," she answered, tightening her small fingers around his. "We did, together." Above them, the glowing arch settled permanently among the laws. Not a wound, not a weapon, but a promise. And far across the universe, countless worlds felt something they had never felt before. Hope. The world felt different after the gate stabilized. The air was lighter, as if something heavy had finally been lifted from the sky. The forest, which had once been silent and afraid, slowly returned to life. Birds began to sing again. Leaves rustled in the gentle wind. Even the sunlight felt warmer, brighter, more alive. Ethan and Luma stood in the center of the glowing clearing, still holding each other's hand. The light that surrounded them slowly softened, though the connection between them remained strong. He could still feel her feelings inside his heart, and she could feel his. "We did it," he whispered, looking around in disbelief. "It's really over." Luma looked up at the calm sky, where the gate now rested as a peaceful, glowing arch among the clouds. Her eyes were filled with both joy and sadness. "The danger has ended," she said softly. "But my journey has not." Ethan turned to her, a sudden fear rising in his chest. "What do you mean?" She lowered her eyes for a moment. "Because the gate is now stable. I no longer belong only to Earth. I belong to both worlds now." Connecting them like a tiny glowing string, it trembled in the air. Then it grew. The light moved across the room, touching the wall, the floor, the door. And wherever it touched, the house seemed to grow warmer, stronger. Almost alive. Walls that had once been full of tiny cracks suddenly looked smoother. The cold corners were filled with soft heat. The darkness felt less heavy. "She's not only an alien," Ethan whispered in fear and awe. "She's something more. A protector, a creator, a light in the dark." Suddenly, strong images burst into his mind again, more intense than ever before. He saw Luma on a different world, a beautiful silver planet where the sky glowed purple and the ground sparkled like glass. He saw others like her, glowing and kind, moving peacefully through fields of light. Then the images turned dark, tall, cruel shadows poured across that world. Cold metal hands grabbed her. A burning mark pressed into her back. Her tiny body was thrown through a tunnel of stars. And then, Earth, alone, crying. Frightened. Ethan gasped and pulled away, his breathing fast, his heart breaking. "They didn't only abandon you, they stole you," he whispered, tears filling his eyes. Luma placed her tiny glowing hand on his face, and the pain inside his head slowly faded into calm. This deep connection had formed between them now. She didn't need to speak in words. He could feel her feelings, her loneliness, her fear, her hope. Then, from far away, a low rumbling sound rolled through the earth. The walls of the house shook slightly, and the windows rattled. Ethan rushed to the window and looked outside, between the clouds, high in the sky. A faint, glowing circle had appeared. It looked almost like a star that didn't belong there, but it was growing larger. "Is that where you came from?" he whispered. Luma slowly nodded. Her face filled with worry. The light in the sky pulsed once, then twice, and a strange shadow passed over the ground. He grabbed Luma and stepped back from the window. "They're opening something," he said quietly. "A door or a path." Suddenly, another voice echoed in his mind, stronger than before. "The marked one must return. She does not belong to you." Ethan's body filled with fear, but he did not back down. "She is not a thing," he said out loud, his voice firm now. "She is a child, and she belongs where she is loved." The air around the house began to vibrate. The small lights in Luma's body brightened fiercely at his words. A soft shield of glowing energy formed around them, wrapping the walls in a circle of protection. Outside, shadowy shapes started to appear between the trees. They were tall, silent, watching. "They are here," Ethan breathed. Luma stepped forward instead of hiding. Her tiny body suddenly looked powerful, not fragile. Light burst from the mark on her back, shining through her clothes. The shadows outside stopped, sensing her strength. For a moment, the entire world seemed frozen. Then the shadows slowly pulled away, melting back into the ground. Afraid of the glowing child who stood in the center of the room, the circle in the sky dimmed slightly. But it did not disappear. Ethan turned to her, amazed. "You saved us." She looked up at him and whispered in her gentle, soft voice, "No, you saved me first." Outside, the wind began to move again. Birds started to sing. Life returned, but Ethan knew the truth now. This was only the beginning. They would come again, stronger, more determined, and, next time, they wouldn't be so easy to stop. He knelt in front of her and held her hands tightly. "Then we will be stronger too," he said. Together. Luma's tiny smile glowed brighter than the rising sun, and somewhere beyond the sky, something ancient turned its gaze toward Earth. The air inside the house slowly returned to normal, but the feeling of being watched did not go away. It hung in the room like an invisible shadow, silent but powerful. Ethan closed the window curtains tightly, not because it would truly stop anything, but because it made him feel like he was at least trying to protect her. Luma stood near the center of the room, her soft glow now calm again, like a small star resting in the dark. She looked at her hands, then at Ethan, and then around the house as if she had never really seen a home before. "This is your home now," Ethan said gently. "You don't have to be afraid here." She walked slowly toward the table and touched it with the tips of her fingers. A faint line of light followed her touch, then disappeared. She smiled, as though she liked the feeling of solid things. Wood, walls, warmth. Ethan realized something then. She was learning this world very fast. He offered her some water, and she drank carefully, watching the way the liquid moved inside the glass first. When she finished, she handed it back to him and looked up with big, curious eyes. "Thank you," he told her softly. "Thank you?" She repeated slowly, trying to copy the word. His heart tightened. Hearing human words come from her small mouth felt unreal, beautiful, and painful all at the same time. "You're learning," he whispered. Smiling just then, the front door creaked. Slowly on its own, Ethan turned sharply. "Did you?" Luma shook her head immediately, fear rising in her eyes. The door opened wider, but there was no one there, only cold air, and on the wooden floor. Right where the door had opened, a thin, glowing symbol appeared for a few seconds, before fading away. It was the same shape as the mark on her back, their sign. Ethan murmured, "A warning." Luma looked down, then slowly reached behind her back. touching the mark that burned gently against her skin. "I don't understand why they want you so badly," he said, pacing the room now. "But I do know one thing. This place is no longer safe." She looked worried. "We can't stay here. They already know where you are." He walked into the bedroom and pulled out an old backpack from the closet. He filled it with food, water, a blanket, and a flashlight. He added some warm clothes for her, too. "We're leaving tonight," he said firmly. "There's an old storage cabin deeper in the forest. No one goes there, not even me anymore. But that's where we'll hide." Luma stepped closer and held onto his hand, trusting him completely as the sun began to set. The sky outside turned deep orange and dark purple. He wrapped her in the blanket and carefully opened the back door. The forest looked peaceful, too peaceful. Not a single bird made a sound. They walked quietly between the trees, leaves crunching under his feet. Every shadow looked darker than it should. Every little sound made his heart jump. Halfway through the forest, Luma suddenly stopped walking. "What's wrong?" he whispered. She lifted her hand slowly and pointed forward. Between the trees, a faint figure was standing. Not human, not glowing like the guardians, but dark and solid. Watching, its form was blurred like smoke covered in ice. "They sent a hunter." Ethan breathed. The figure did not move closer. Instead, it stretched its arms slowly in Luma's direction. The ground beneath their feet began to vibrate. Trees leaned away as if afraid. Luma's body began to glow again, brighter, stronger. Her small hands lifted into the air, and the same shield of light grew out from her. Pushing against the darkness, "Luma, stop. You're going to drain yourself." Ethan cried, afraid for her, but she didn't stop. Her light pushed harder, stronger, until finally, the figure cracked like glass dot and shattered into the air. The forest went still again. Luma collapsed into his arms. "Hey, Luma," he said urgently, holding her close. Her glow had become weak again. She looked exhausted, like a small candle flickering in the wind. He held her tighter, panic in his chest. "Don't do that. Please, I need you." She gently placed her hand on his heart one more time. A soft warmth passed into him. She wasn't gone, just tired. "I'm here," she whispered faintly. He smiled through tears. "You scared me." They finally reached the hidden cabin as full darkness covered the forest. It was old, broken in places, but it was hidden. Safe for now, he gently laid her down on the worn bed inside and covered her with the blanket. Her body slowly grew warmer again as she slept. Ethan sat by her side all night, watching her small glowing chest rise and fall. "They will keep coming," he whispered to himself. "They won't stop." He looked down at the tiny alien child, who trusted him with her life. "And neither will I," outside the cabin in the silent darkness. Something far more powerful than before was now. Watching the forest, not hunting. Not searching, studying, and preparing for what Luma was. Becoming the small cabin in the forest felt like the only safe place left in the world. Wrapped in darkness and silence. The old wooden walls creaked softly as the night wind brushed against them. But inside, everything was still. Ethan sat on the floor beside the small bed, staring at Luma's quiet, glowing face. Her breathing was slow and gentle now, but her light was weaker than before. The energy she had used to destroy the hunter had drained her deeply. "You didn't have to do that alone," he whispered, gently brushing a lock of glowing hair from her forehead. "You don't have to carry this by yourself anymore." Outside, the trees whispered in an uneasy way, like they knew something was coming that even they could not stop. As the night passed, Ethan could not sleep. Every sound made him glance toward the door. Every shadow made him tense. He felt as though a heavy eye was staring down at the forest, observing, learning. Waiting just before dawn, Luma stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing their familiar silver glow. She looked around the small room, then up at him quietly. It was a cold and quiet night when Ethan walked home from his late shift at the factory. His shoulders heavy with tiredness and his mind even heavier with thoughts he tried to forget. The town was silent, the streets almost empty, and only the soft glow of streetlights followed him on his way. He usually avoided the small forest at the edge of town, but tonight the main road was under repair, so he had no choice but to take the narrow path that passed through the trees. The air felt strange, thicker than usual, as if the forest itself was watching him. Then he heard it, a soft, broken cry. It was not the cry of an animal, and it did not sound completely human either. It was small, weak, almost like the whimper of a lost baby. Ethan stopped. His heart started beating fast. He looked around, trying to see where the sound was coming from, but the darkness between the trees made it difficult. The cry came again. This time, closer, he slowly walked toward the sound, moving leaves and branches out of his way. His breath became slow and careful as he didn't know what he was about to find. Then he saw her, under an old fallen tree, wrapped in torn leaves and dirt. There was a tiny little child. But she was not like any child he had ever seen. Her skin had a soft, pale glow, like moonlight, and her small body trembled as she cried. Her eyes were larger than normal, dark and shining like the night sky, and her tiny hands clutched at the cold ground as if it was the only thing holding her in this world. Ethan's mouth went dry. "She's not human," he whispered. For a moment, he thought about running away, about pretending he had never seen her. Anyone would think he was crazy if he told them he had found an alien child in the forest. But then she looked up at him. Her eyes met his, filled with fear, pain, and confusion. She did not try to attack him. She did not scream louder. She just cried. Like a child who had lost everything. That single moment broke something inside him. He slowly knelt down in front of her, careful not to scare her. "Hey, it's okay. You're safe now, Ellie," he said softly. Even though he had no idea if she could understand his words, the tiny alien child flinched when he reached out his hand. Then, seeing that he did not touch her, she hesitantly moved her small fingers toward him instead. Her hand was warm, faintly glowing. When her skin touched his, a strange warmth spread through his body. She was freezing, thin, and weak. Ethan realized she must have been out here for a very long time. "Who could leave you here?" he murmured painfully. He took off his jacket without thinking and gently wrapped it around her tiny body. The fabric was far too big, but it covered her and made her stop shaking so much. The little girl looked up at him, surprised, and her crying slowly became softer. Her breath began to calm. He carefully picked her up. She weighed almost nothing, like holding a fragile light instead of a real body. She did not fight him. Instead, she leaned against his chest, pressing her small, glowing forehead to his heart. And then she made a sound he hadn't expected, a tiny sigh. Like relief, Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "You were so alone," he whispered as he walked through the forest with her in his arms. A strange blue light suddenly flickered in the sky above the trees. The ground vibrated slightly, almost like a soft earthquake. He froze. What was that? He wondered, his heart now filled with fear and confusion, hidden between the stars. Something had noticed the child was no longer alone. Something was waking up, something that had once abandoned her. But Ethan did not know that yet. All he knew was that the tiny alien child in his arms had stopped crying. And for the first time in a long while, he felt like his life had gained a purpose. He looked down at her and whispered the words that would change everything. "Don't worry. I won't leave you." ever. As they left the forest behind, the tiny alien's body glowed a little brighter, and far away, in the silent darkness of space, eyes had opened, watching, searching, coming. Ethan reached his small house just as the first light of dawn began to touch the sky. The world was quiet, like it was still asleep, unaware that something impossible had just entered his life. In his arms, the tiny alien child rested silently, her small, glowing body warm against his chest, her tears finally gone. He carefully opened the door and stepped inside, moving as slowly as he could so he would not wake her. The house was simple, a small living room, a tiny kitchen, and one bedroom. But at that moment, it felt like the safest place on earth. He gently placed her on the sofa and covered her with a soft blanket. She curled up instantly, her body relaxing as if she had not felt safety in a very long time. Ethan sat down on the floor beside her, just watching her breathe. Each rise and fall of her chest filled him with a strange relief. "You're real," he whispered, shaking his head in disbelief. As the sunlight entered the room, he saw her more clearly now. Her skin shimmered in pale shades of silver and soft blue. Fine glowing lines, like tiny rivers of light, ran along her arms. Her eyelashes were long and dark, and her lips trembled slightly even as she slept, like she might still be dreaming of fear. She looked so small, so fragile. How could anyone leave her alone in the forest? A painful thought crossed Ethan's mind. What if they were still looking for her? As if the world heard that thought, the light in the room suddenly flickered. The air grew strangely cold for a second. Then everything returned to normal. He stood up quickly, his heart racing. "It's okay," he said quietly, even though she was still asleep. "No one is taking you. Not from here." He went into the kitchen and searched through his cupboards. He found a small apple, some bread, and a little honey. He didn't know what she could eat, but he hoped something would be better than nothing. While he was preparing food, he felt something watching him. He turned slowly. The tiny alien child was awake. Her huge glowing eyes were focused on him, filled with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. She had never seen a kitchen before. Maybe she had never seen a human prepare food before. "It's okay," he said with a small smile. "I'm just making something for you to eat." She didn't respond with words, but she didn't look afraid either. Instead, she slowly sat up and watched every move he made. When he placed a small piece of apple in front of her, she touched it gently, as if she thought it might disappear. Then she took a small bite. Her eyes widened in shock. Ethan laughed softly. "Is it good?" She nodded quickly and began to eat, small, happy sounds coming from her throat. For the first time, he heard something that almost sounded like a laugh. It warmed his heart. "You need a name," he said thoughtfully, watching her finish the apple. "I can't just call you Alien Child forever." She looked up at him as if trying to understand the idea of a name. He thought for a moment. "What about Luma?" When he said it, a soft glow spread through her body. The light pulsed once, then twice. As if her body recognized the sound, she touched her chest gently and whispered, "Lu-Ma." Ethan smiled widely. "Luma. Yes, that's you." Just then, a strange, low humming sound filled the air around them, almost like a deep vibration from somewhere far away. The glass on the window began to shake slightly. Luma's body stiffened. Her eyes filled with fear again. She jumped off the sofa and ran toward Ethan, clinging tightly to his leg. Hey, it's okay," he said immediately, kneeling down and holding her close. "I won't let anything hurt you." But even as he said the words, he felt a strange pressure in his mind, like someone was trying to see inside his thoughts. Then, a voice echoed deep inside his head. "The child has been found." Ethan gasped and looked around the room, but no one was there. "Who are you?" he whispered in fear. There was no answer, but the humming grew louder for a moment, then slowly faded into nothing. The room fell silent again. Luma looked up at him, her small hands gripping his shirt. Her eyes were full of worry. "They're looking for you, aren't they?" he murmured, brushing her glowing hair away from her face. She gave a small, slow nod. Ethan felt his heart twist. He looked at the door, then the windows, then back at the tiny child in his arms. "No matter who they are," he said quietly, with a strength he didn't know he had, "you are not going back to being alone. I don't care where you came from. This is your home now." Luma slowly relaxed in his arms. A soft light flowed from her into his chest, like a silent thank you. Outside, far beyond the clouds, something massive shifted in the darkness. Something had hurt him, and something was not pleased. The house felt different after the strange voice faded. It was still the same small, quiet place with worn furniture and faded walls. But now, it felt like it was holding a secret too big for its size. Even the air seemed to know that something important had entered this world. Ethan sat on the floor, holding Luma close to his chest. Her small body was trembling again, but this time she was not crying. She was listening, feeling, remembering. "Does it always feel like this when they are near?" he whispered. Luma slowly nodded, her glowing fingers tightening around his shirt. Her light flickered, growing dim and then bright again, like a heart struggling to stay calm. "It's okay," he murmured, brushing her strange, glowing hair gently. "You're safe here. I promise you." At that moment, something strange happened. The old lamp in the corner of the room suddenly turned on by itself, then on again. The glass on the table began to slide slowly across the surface without anyone touching it. Ethan stared in shock. "Luma, are you doing this?" he asked softly. She looked at her hands, just as surprised as him. A thin line of light formed between her palms.